The wind howled across the Wyoming plains, driving sharp flakes sideways like broken glass. Nathaniel Boone leaned into the storm, one arm shielding the two small girls clinging to his coat. His boots sank deep into the drifts as he forced his way toward the trailhead. His heartbeat thudded like a hammer in his ears. He had almost turned back when he saw her. A young woman in a torn wedding dress, snow-covered, shaking, stumbling toward the tree-line as if pushed by ghosts. Her veil whipped across her face. Frost clung to her lashes, and still she walked. Nathaniel froze. She wasn't just wandering. She was running. From something or someone. He tried calling out, but the wind swallowed his voice. The twins huddled tighter against his legs. Then the woman collapsed. Her knees buckled. Her body folded to the snow. She lifted her head once, just once, as if begging the world not to forget her. Nathaniel reached her, breath raw. Her lips trembled. Please don't leave. That single, breaking whisper struck something deep inside him. Who was she running from? And why did fate bring her to his land today? The storm roared for an answer. None came. Nathaniel dropped to his knees beside the woman. Snow coated her hair, her shoulders, her wedding dress, white on white, disappearing into the storm. He touched her cheek. Ice cold. Ma'am, he said, voice tight. Can you hear me? She blinked weakly. Her breath came in thin, broken puffs. Don't leave me here, she whispered again. Please. His chest tightened. Nathaniel wasn't a man easily shaken, but there was something in her voice, raw fear, deep sorrow, quiet resignation, that cut through him sharper than the wind. I'm not leaving, he said. Not a chance. His daughters clung to him, frightened. Ruth and Emma Boone, brown-eyed, shivering, stared at the fallen bride, as if unsure whether she was real. Daddy, is she dying? Little Ruth whispered. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Not if I can help it. He lifted the woman into his arms. She was lighter than she should have been. Too light. A body worn from days or weeks of carrying burdens alone. Her head fell against his shoulder. Her breath warmed his collarbone for a moment, then faded. Not gone. Just faint. Daddy, hurry, Emma cried. Please. Nathaniel didn't need urging. He gripped both girls' hands and pulled them close as he trudged toward Boone Ridge Ranch through the blinding white. Every step felt heavier than the last. But he didn't slow. Not when a life depended on him. Not when this stranger had clearly been thrown to the wolves. And not when, deep in his bones, something told him this woman wasn't meant to die alone in the snow. Boone Ridge Ranch loomed through the storm like a dark mountain. The lights glowed warm behind frosted windows. Smoke poured from the chimney. Martha DeWitt, Nathaniel's longtime housekeeper, burst out the door before he reached the porch. For heaven's sake, what happened? She cried. Found her in the drift by the North Trail, Nathaniel said, voice strained. Wedding dress and all. Martha gasped. Bring her in, quick. Nathaniel kicked the door shut behind him as warmth rushed over them. He laid the woman carefully on the long sofa near the fire. Martha lifted the edge of the soaked dress. Look at this fabric. She must have walked miles in this. Poor soul. Nathaniel worked fast. Coat off. Blanket over the woman. Boots off. Hot stones wrapped in cloth set near her feet. The children stood silently by the hearth, watching everything with wide, solemn eyes. Then the woman coughed weakly. Nathaniel moved to her side. Ma'am, stay with me. Her lashes fluttered. What's your name? He asked softly. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Panic flickered across her face, as if she feared she'd lose more than just her voice. It's all right, Nathaniel murmured. You're safe. Martha brought a cup of warm broth. Here, try. The woman drank slowly, hands trembling as Nathaniel steadied the cup. I'm Grace, she whispered. Her voice cracked on the name like it hurt to speak it. Nathaniel nodded once. Grace. I'm Nathaniel Boone. This is my home. Grace blinked at the twins. Your girls. Yes. They're beautiful, she whispered. The twins pressed against Nathaniel's legs. She fell in the snow. Emma said softly. We found her. Grace's eyes filled, but she didn't weep. She simply touched Emma's hand gently, as if unsure she still had the right to touch kindness. As the storm raged outside, quiet settled inside the ranch house. The fire popped. The clock ticked. Grace's breathing steadied little by little. Nathaniel sat across from her, elbows on his knees, studying her face. She looked young, mid-20s maybe, and broken. Not fragile, not weak. Broken the way a woman breaks when someone pushes her past all sense of safety. Grace noticed his gaze. "I didn't mean to trouble you," she whispered. "You didn't trouble a soul," Nathaniel said. "You needed help. That's enough." Grace lowered her eyes. "I thought I was going to die out there." Nathaniel swallowed. "What happened to you?" Grace hesitated. Her fingers curled tightly into the blanket. She didn't answer. Not yet. Nathaniel didn't push. Not with the twins listening, and not with fear still in her breathing. Instead, he said, "You're welcome to rest here as long as you need." Grace's chin trembled. She shook her head. "I can't stay. I don't want to be a burden." Nathaniel leaned forward. His voice softened, but it carried strength like iron beneath velvet. "You're not a burden, and I'm not sending you out into a blizzard." A single tear slid down Grace's cheek. She brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. Nathaniel looked at the twins. "Girls, why don't you go fetch Miss Grace a warm quilt from the linen room?" They rushed off, eager for a task. Their footsteps pattered down the hallway. Grace watched them disappear, then whispered, "You're a good father." Nathaniel didn't feel like one. Not since his wife died 2 winters ago. Not since he'd taken on the ranch, the twins, and the quiet, heavy grief that filled every corner of the house. "I try," he said. Grace nodded faintly. "Trying counts." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Not from pain, but from something else. Something warm. Something he'd locked away long ago. Emma and Ruth returned with an armful of soft quilts. They piled them on Grace with great ceremony. "Do you like blue?" Emma asked. Grace smiled weakly. "It's lovely." Ruth crawled onto the foot of the sofa, tiny fingers brushing Grace's wrist. "Are you getting married?" she asked innocently. "Your dress is pretty." Grace's breath caught. Her eyes filled again. Nathaniel stepped closer. "Girls, let Miss Grace rest." But Grace lifted a hand. "It's all right," she whispered. Then she looked at Ruth, pain trembling behind her smile. "I was, but not anymore." The twins blinked, confused but silent. Grace's gaze dropped to her torn hem. Snowmelt dripped onto the rug. "I was left behind," she said softly. "And I ran." Nathaniel didn't miss the way her shoulders shook, even though she tried to hide it. He didn't ask more. He simply said, "No one deserves that." Grace's lip trembled. "No," she whispered, but it happened anyway. Hours passed. Grace warmed slowly. The twins fell asleep on a quilt near the hearth. Martha busied herself in the kitchen, pretending not to eavesdrop. Nathaniel sat in the armchair beside Grace, adjusting logs, watching her recover bit by bit. Outside, the snowstorm eased into a gentle fall. Quiet, steady, peaceful. Inside, something began to shift. Grace watched the flames, her voice barely audible. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Nathaniel took a slow breath. "You were alone in the snow," he said. "No man with a beating heart would have walked past." Grace stared at him, really stared, like she hadn't heard a kind truth in a long time. "Nathaniel," she whispered. He looked at her. She hesitated, swallowing hard. Then, "I'm afraid of what happens when morning comes." He leaned closer, voice low, steady. "Morning doesn't get to scare you here." Grace closed her eyes. A tear slipped down. When she opened them again, her voice broke. "Please don't leave." Nathaniel's chest tightened. "I'm not leaving, Grace. You're safe." Her shoulders loosened. Her breath steadied. Slowly, painfully, she drifted into sleep. Nathaniel didn't look away. Not once. As Grace slept and the twins dreamed beside the fire, Nathaniel walked quietly to the window. The storm had cleared. Moonlight fell across the snow, and in the distance, faint footprints led down the ridge. Fresh ones, too fresh to ignore. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Someone else had been out there tonight, and they weren't lost. They were watching. Morning crept into Boone Ridge Ranch slow and pale, sliding across the wooden floors and warming the quilts where the twins still slept. Grace woke with a sharp breath, unsure for a moment where she was. The smell of wood smoke, the soft crackle of the fire, and the quiet breathing of the little girls grounded her. Not the church, not the road, not the cold. A ranch house. Safe for now. Grace lifted herself slowly. Her body ached from cold and heartbreak, but warmth had found her bones again. She looked around. Nathaniel Boone was missing. Her heartbeat quickened. She stood carefully, pulling the quilt around her shoulders. The boots by the door were gone. The coat he'd hung last night, gone too. He'd been outside. Maybe he was still out there. Grace walked to the window, fingers trembling as she pulled back the curtain. Outside, the yard was washed in morning gold. Snow shimmered like dusted sugar. The barn door was cracked open, and Nathaniel Boone was chopping wood, shirt sleeves rolled, breath fogging, each swing sharp and clean. Grace stared, not at his strength, not at the way the light struck his hair, but at something quieter, something steadier. A man who faced the morning without fear. A man who didn't run. Her throat tightened. She wished she remembered what that felt like. A small hand tugged at her nightdress. "Mornin', Miss Grace," Ruth whispered sleepily. Her hair stuck out in every direction. Grace turned, smiling faintly. "Good morning, sweetheart." Emma stretched, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy's chopping wood. He does that when he's thinking too hard." Grace blinked. "Thinking about what?" "Lots of things," Emma said. "Mama, the ranch, the storms, us, the horses, the fence, and now you." Ruth nodded with great seriousness. "He thinks about you a whole lot." Grace's cheeks warmed. "Does he?" "Oh, yes," Emma said. "He stayed by you all night. He didn't sleep even once." Grace froze. He stayed there?" Ruth pointed to the armchair. "He sat right there, watching the fire and watching you." Grace's breath shook. No one had watched over her in years. Not with care, not with patience, not with the quiet kind of attention that asked for nothing in return. She touched the back of the chair gently. "Why would he do that?" she whispered. Emma shrugged. "Daddy says folks shouldn't suffer alone." Grace swallowed around a knot in her throat. Maybe the world still had men who believed that. Martha bustled into the room, apron tight, sleeves rolled. She carried a tray filled with biscuits, butter, and preserved peaches. "Well, look who's awake," she said. "You look a sight better than last night. Thank heavens." Grace felt a rush of embarrassment. "I must have been a burden. Hush that talk," Martha snapped. "Anyone who walks into a storm in lace and satin ain't looking to inconvenience people. They're looking to survive." Grace blinked. Martha softened. "Eat, dear," she said gently. "You need strength." The girls climbed onto the sofa beside Grace as she ate slowly, savoring warm food she hadn't tasted in days. Outside, the cold bit her cheeks, but it wasn't cruel like the night before. Snow crunched softly beneath her borrowed boots. Nathaniel paused mid-swing when he saw her. "You shouldn't be outside yet," he said, breath heavy. "I'm feeling stronger," Grace said. He studied her carefully. "You're sure?" Grace nodded. Nathaniel set down the axe. His shoulders loosened. "You slept well." Grace hesitated. "Your girls told me. You stayed by the fire all night." Nathaniel cleared his throat. "House gets cold. Fire goes out fast. Needed tending." Grace gave him a tiny smile. "Is that the reason?" His eyes flicked up to hers. For a moment, something unguarded passed between them. Soft, uncertain, almost dangerous. Then he looked away. "You hungry?" he asked. "I ate," she said. "Thank you." He nodded once, stuffing his hands into his coat pockets. Snowflakes drifted between them. Grace took a breath. "Mr. Boone, Nathaniel," he said quietly. She looked down, shy. "Nathaniel, I owe you more than I can say." He shook his head. "No need for debt. Not here." Grace's voice softened. "But you saved my life." Nathaniel's jaw flexed. "You walked into a storm wearing white satin," he said. "Makes me think someone else failed you long before the weather did." Grace's stomach twisted. He wasn't wrong. Nathaniel lifted his gaze again. "You don't got to tell me anything right now," he said. "But when you're ready, I'll listen." Grace blinked fast, eyes stinging. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "Then don't," he said softly. "Not until it feels safe." Safe. She didn't remember the last time a place, or a man, felt that way. The twins ran out of the house bundled in coats, scarves trailing behind them like tiny flags. "Daddy, Miss Grace, come look." Ruth held a clump of snow shaped like a crooked little snowbird. Emma had crafted a snow rabbit. Grace laughed, really laughed for the first time in months. "They're lovely," she said. Nathaniel watched her laugh. Something in him shifted. He hadn't heard that sound in years. Not since his wife died. Not since the house lost its light. Grace caught him staring and blushed. "I used to make snow animals as a girl," she said softly. "Before life grew heavy." Nathaniel swallowed. "Maybe it doesn't have to stay heavy." Grace looked at him. A long moment passed between them, soft as breath, warm as firelight. The twins didn't notice, but Grace and Nathaniel did. Later, while the girls played, Grace wandered toward the barn. She stopped at the fence, watching the horses stir lazily in the corral. Peace settled over her shoulders like a warm shawl, until she saw them. Footprints. Not Nathaniel's. Not the twins. Not Martha's. Deep, leading away from the ridge, leading toward the ranch house. Her breath hitched. Nathaniel. He was by her side instantly. "What's wrong?" Grace pointed to the prints, eyes wide. "Those weren't here last night." Nathaniel's face hardened instantly. "No," he murmured. "They weren't." Grace's pulse quickened. "Someone was here?" Nathaniel crouched, studying the tracks. "They came from the tree line," he said. "Stood here for a while. Maybe watching the house." A shiver crawled up Grace's spine. "Do you think it could have been him?" Nathaniel looked up. "I think someone is looking for you," he said quietly. Grace's knees weakened. Nathaniel rose, stepping close. "You're safe," he said. "Whoever he is, he won't get near you." Grace pressed a hand to her chest, breath trembling. Nathaniel didn't touch her, but he stood close enough that she felt his steadiness like a shelter. The wind picked up, brushing snow across the yard. In the distance, near the ridge, something moved among the trees. Nathaniel saw it. Grace didn't. He stepped slightly in front of her. "Grace," he murmured, voice tight. "We need to talk inside." She looked up at him, fear blooming slowly. "Why?" she whispered. Nathaniel didn't answer, but the shadow on the ridge said enough. The ranch house felt different that morning. Warmer, busier, alive in a way Grace hadn't felt in a long time. Martha moved through the kitchen like a quiet storm of purpose, pans clinking, dough rising, steam fogging the windows. The smell of biscuits and hot coffee curled through the rooms like a promise of safety. Grace sat wrapped in a quilt, watching Martha's hands work. There was comfort in it, the certainty, the rhythm. It reminded her of mornings long before her world fell apart. "You're staring," Martha said without looking up. Grace flushed. "I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Only means you're remembering what a home feels like." Grace stiffened. "Home." The word hit hard. Martha cut butter into flour with sharp, efficient motions. "You've been looking over your shoulder all morning," she said. "You're scared." Grace swallowed. "Should I not be?" Martha softened. "Fear's natural, but you're not alone here." Grace glanced toward the front window. Nathaniel was tightening the saddle straps on his gelding, jaw set, shoulders coiled with tension. Two rifles leaned against the corral fence. He hadn't said much after seeing the footprints. He didn't have to. Grace already knew. Someone was coming. Someone from her past. Someone who wouldn't stop until he had what he believed he owned. Martha's voice pulled her back. "You don't need to tell me the whole story," she said. "But you should tell Nathaniel." Grace lowered her gaze. "I will. I just don't know how." Martha reached over and squeezed her hand. "Start with the truth. The rest'll follow." Grace let out a shaky breath. She hoped Martha was right. Later that morning, Grace stepped into the yard with Ruth and Emma tugging her hands. "Come on, Miss Grace." Ruth shouted, "We want to show you Daisy." Grace blinked. "Who's Daisy?" Emma pointed at the small brown mare grazing near the fence. "She's Daddy's gentlest horse. He says she's got more patience than he does." Grace smiled for the first time that day. The twins ran ahead, giggling. Grace followed, her breath forming soft clouds in the cold air. Emma climbed halfway up the fence. "Daisy likes apples, and hair ribbons, and being brushed. Want to try?" Grace hesitated. She hadn't been around horses since she was a child. Her father used to lift her onto the saddle with one hand. He always smelled of cedar and pipe smoke. That memory hit her fast, sharp, unexpected. "Miss Grace," Ruth asked softly. Grace blinked. "Yes, sweetheart. I like to." The girls squealed with delight. Grace approached Daisy slowly. The mare lifted her head, ears flicking forward. Grace reached out, her hand shaking only a little. Daisy's warm breath puffed against her palm. "She likes you," Emma whispered. Grace stroked the mare's neck. "Maybe she does," she murmured. For a moment, just a moment, the fear faded. Not gone, but softened. Nathaniel watched from across the yard, his expression unreadable. Grace laughing with his girls. Grace brushing Daisy's coat gently. Grace standing in the winter sun with the quilt slipping from her shoulders, looking more alive than she had the night before. Something inside him tightened, not painful, but unfamiliar. The girls adored her already. He didn't dare admit what that meant. Not out loud. Oliver Dunn, one of his ranch hands, walked up beside him. "You look like you swallowed a whole hornet's nest," Oliver muttered. Nathaniel shot him a warning glance. "Don't start." Oliver smirked. "I ain't blind. She's kind, pretty, and your girls follow her like lost ducklings." Nathaniel said nothing. Oliver nudged him lightly. "She's trouble." "No," Nathaniel said. "She's running from trouble." Oliver's smile faded. "The footprints." Nathaniel nodded. "Think it's him?" Oliver asked quietly. "I'm sure of it." Oliver blew out a long breath. "Then we need to be ready." Nathaniel felt the truth settle heavy on his shoulders. He had 2 little girls to protect, a ranch to defend, and now a woman who'd walked into his life half dead in the snow. A woman he shouldn't care for, but already did. Grace found Nathaniel in the barn just before noon. He was brushing down his horse, movement steady but tense, as if each stroke was holding something inside him from breaking loose. She lingered by the door. "Nathaniel." He didn't look up right away. When he did, his expression softened just a fraction. "You cold?" he asked. Grace shook her head. "I wanted to talk." Nathaniel set the brush aside and wiped his hands on a cloth. "All right." Grace's heartbeat roared in her ears. She took a breath. "There's someone who might be following me." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "I figured." Grace's hands twisted in the quilt. "I didn't want to bring danger here." "I'm not sending you out," he said firmly. Grace blinked. "But your girls, they're safe," he said. "I'll make sure of it." Her lip trembled. "Nathaniel, you don't understand what kind of man he is." Nathaniel's gaze sharpened. "Then tell me." Grace closed her eyes. Her past rose like a storm. "My husband died last spring," she whispered. "And his brother, Marcus Hale, blamed me for it. He said I owed him for the money my husband lost. He said," her voice broke. "He said I belonged to him now." Nathaniel's jaw clenched. "He hurt you?" he asked quietly. Grace shook her head. "Not physically, but he tried to take everything. My house, my dowry, my future. I refused to marry him. So he came to the church yesterday. He dragged me outside before the ceremony. Said if I didn't agree, he'd make sure I never married anyone." Nathaniel took a slow breath. Measured, controlled, dangerous. "He left you in that storm?" he asked. Grace swallowed. "He left me on the steps. I ran. I kept running." Nathaniel stepped closer. Close enough she could feel his warmth. "You did the right thing," he said softly. "No woman deserves to be owned." Grace's breath hitched. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to bring this onto your land." Nathaniel shook his head. "Grace, people bring trouble everywhere. Doesn't mean they deserve to face it alone." Her eyes filled, and before she could stop herself, she reached for him, not grabbing, just the soft touch of her fingers against his sleeve. Nathaniel froze. Then he let out a shaky breath she wasn't meant to hear. "You're safe here," he said again, even softer. Grace closed her eyes. For the first time, she almost believed him. The barn door creaked. Oliver hurried inside, breath fogging. "Nathaniel," he said quickly, "you need to see something done." Nathaniel's hand tensed it aside. "What is it?" Oliver held up a scrap of dark fabric caught on a fence post. "Found this by the east pasture." Grace felt the blood drain from her face. It was familiar. Too familiar. The exact shade of Marcus Hale's coat. Her knees wobbled. Nathaniel caught her elbow before she fell. Grace whispered, "He's here." Nathaniel didn't speak, but the promise in his eyes said everything the wind didn't. Nathaniel helped Grace back to the house, his hand steady on her arm. The twins watched from the window, worry painting their small faces. Nathaniel looked once more toward the ridge. Something moved between the trees. A figure. Still. Watching. Grace didn't see it. Nathaniel did. "We'll handle this," he murmured. "How?" she asked. He didn't answer, but the way he closed the door behind them said he'd already made up his mind. Grace barely slept that night. Each gust of wind against the window made her flinch. Each creak of the house made her heart race. But she wasn't alone in her fear. She could hear Nathaniel pacing the hallway, wearing a path in the floorboards, stopping only when the twins stirred in their sleep. By dawn, dark circles shadowed his eyes. He stepped into the kitchen where Grace was warming milk for the twins. He tried to hide the fatigue, but she saw it anyway. "You didn't rest," she whispered. "Didn't need to," he said. A lie. They both knew it. Grace poured him a cup of coffee. Nathaniel took it carefully, like he wasn't sure he deserved kindness. "I've already saddled the bay," he said. "Oliver and I are going to ride the East Ridge. Want to see what we're dealing with." Grace's pulse skipped. "You're going after him." Nathaniel held her gaze. "I'm making sure he doesn't come after you." She gripped the edge of the counter until her knuckles whitened. "But Nathaniel, he's dangerous. And you have the girls to think about." His jaw worked. "I am thinking about them. That's why I'm going." He set the mug down gently. "I won't let a man like that step foot on this land." Grace swallowed. "Hard. You don't have to protect me." He shook his head slowly. "You showed up here half frozen and still try to leave because you were scared you'd be a burden. You've been looking over your shoulder since the moment I found you." His voice softened until it nearly broke. "Grace, nobody's protected you in a long time. Let me do it." Her breath trembled. But before she could answer, Ruth's tired voice carried from the doorway. "Mama Grace, is somebody coming to hurt us?" Grace turned, startled. "Mama," she echoed, stunned. Ruth rubbed her eyes. "Sorry. I mean Miss Grace." Grace knelt, wrapping an arm around the child. "No one is going to hurt you. Your papa won't let anything happen." Nathaniel stepped forward, resting a hand on his daughter's head. "That's right, sweetheart. You and Emma are safe." Ruth nodded, but fear lingered in her eyes. Grace looked up at Nathaniel. She saw the truth there. He was terrified, too. But he died before showing it to his girls. 2 hours later, Nathaniel and Oliver rode out. The sun glinted off frost-covered grass, the cold air biting through wool coats. Grace watched from the porch, holding the twins close. Nathaniel didn't look back. Not once. Grace understood why. If he did, he might not go. Inside, Martha handed Grace a warm blanket. "You're shaken," she said. "I'm fine," Grace murmured automatically. "You're lying," Martha replied flatly. "But that's your right." Grace managed a weak smile. Martha poured tea into a tin cup. "Trouble comes in many forms. But you're not facing it alone. This house is full of people who'd bleed for each other." Grace stared into the steam rising from the cup. "Martha, why are you so kind to me?" Martha paused long enough to make Grace look up. "Because once I was you." Grace blinked. "You were." Martha nodded. "Married young. Husband drank. Had a temper. Took it out on me." She tapped her finger against her teacup. "One night he broke a board across my back. I ran through a snowstorm and ended up on the steps of the church. Nathaniel's mama found me." Grace swallowed. "I didn't know." "Don't need pity," Martha said briskly. "Just letting you know you're not the first woman to outrun a demon." She leaned closer. "And not the first woman Nathaniel's tried to save." Grace's eyes softened. "He saved you. He and his mother did." Martha smiled faintly. "Good man, that one. Too proud sometimes. Too hard on himself. But he protects what's his." Grace's heart tugged hard at her chest. "What's his?" The words echoed. The ridge stretched high and white beneath the winter sky. Nathaniel dismounted, crouching beside the fence post. Another scrap of fabric. Same dark color. Same torn edge. Oliver's breath fogged beside him. That's fresh, Oliver muttered. Maybe 6 hours old. Nathaniel stared down the line of trees. He's watching, he said. He ain't stupid. He's talking his time. Oliver tensed. What do you want to do? Nathaniel clenched his jaw. Bring the girls inside after chores. No one goes out alone. No one rides past the creek. We keep the rifle above the door loaded. Oliver nodded. And her. Nathaniel didn't look away from the trees. Grace stays close to me. He said it without thinking, just raw instinct. Oliver's brows lifted. Close to you how? Nathaniel shot him a warning look. Oliver grinned. Was only his skin. She's a good woman. Nathaniel mounted his horse with a sharp tug on the reins. That ain't the point. Oliver chuckled. Sure sounds like it is. Nathaniel glared at the horizon. Let's ride, he said tightly. But Oliver was right. Grace wasn't just a guest. She was tethered to something in him. Something old. Something dangerous. Something he couldn't afford to feel. And yet, he felt it anyway. When Nathaniel returned that evening, his face told Grace everything before she asked. You found signs? He nodded. He's close. Grace's throat tightened. I'm sorry. No, Nathaniel said sharply. Don't apologize for existing. Don't apologize for surviving. Grace blinked. His anger wasn't at her. It was at every man who'd made her afraid. Nathaniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. He sees you as property. I see you as, he stopped. Grace's breath hitched. As what? Nathaniel swallowed hard. As someone worth standing between the world and whatever's chasing her. Grace's eyes burned. Nathaniel. He shook his head quickly, as if stopping himself from going too far. You should rest. The girls will want you to read to them tonight. Grace stepped forward, shaking. Please don't shut me out. Not now. Nathaniel held perfectly still. I ain't shutting you out, he said. I'm trying not to pull you into something you're not ready for. Grace took another step. I'm already in it. Their breaths mingled. Her hand brushed his sleeve, just barely. Nathaniel inhaled sharply. He didn't touch her back, but he didn't step away. After supper, Grace read to Ruth, and Emma curled beneath a quilt. But her voice wavered, drifting with fear and exhaustion. Halfway through the story, she stopped mid-sentence. Mama Grace. Emma whispered. Grace froze. Mama, she repeated, stunned. Emma shrank a little. I mean, Miss Grace. Grace's throat closed. No, she whispered. It's all right. You can call me that if you want. Both twins nodded sleepily. We want. It hit Grace with the force of a storm. That one word, Mama, filled all the broken spaces inside her. By the time the girls drifted into sleep, Grace's tears were silent and unstoppable. Nathaniel appeared in the doorway. He saw her tears. He saw the sleeping girls curled against her side, and something in his expression cracked open. You all right? He asked softly. Grace wiped her face. They call me Mama. Nathaniel leaned against the doorframe, his voice barely above a whisper. They've been wanting to for a while. Her eyes widened. Why didn't they? Because they were waiting for you. Grace covered her mouth. Nathaniel stepped closer. You're good for them, he said. You're good for this house. Grace looked up, trembling. And you? Nathaniel stopped inches away. He exhaled slowly. You're good for me, too. Her heartbeat fluttered, terrified and hopeful. Nathaniel. But before she could say more, a loud knock thundered against the front door. The house fell silent. Nathaniel's entire body stiffened. Grace, he whispered, eyes darkening with fear. Get behind me. Now. Snow pressed against the windows in soft white waves, muting the world outside the Brennan Ranch. Winter had settled deep and quiet across Sage Hollow, the kind of winter that slowed the days and stretched the nights. But inside the ranch house, everything felt warm. Caroline sat near the hearth, sewing patches on her Rose's dress while the little girl lay sprawled on her stomach nearby, tongue poking out in concentration as she practiced her letters. Lily was curled up on the rug with her dolls, humming softly. The sound, simple, sweet, unhurried, made the house feel complete in a way Caroline still struggled to believe was real. Thomas had finished evening chores early because the snow was rising fast. He stepped in through the mudroom door now, stamping snow from his boots, rubbing his gloved hands together. "You three look cozy," he said, voice warm as he took off his coat. Rose didn't look up. "We are," Lily added. "Mama made cocoa." Caroline smiled at the name they'd started using naturally, Mama, and felt it wrap around her heart like a quilt. "Your share's on the stove," she said, "before it cools." Thomas poured himself a mug, inhaled the steam, and walked over to her. "You should rest a minute," he murmured. "You've been working since before dawn." "So have you." He crouched beside her. "But I'm not 7 months pregnant." She gave him a look. "And I'm not made of glass." "Never said you were." "But," he touched her shoulder lightly, "you don't have to do everything alone." "I know," she said softly. "That's still a lesson I'm learning." He squeezed her hand, and the silent moment between them warmed her even more than the fire. Thomas lowered himself carefully onto the rug beside Lily. "What are your dolls up to today?" "They're having a parade," Lily said seriously. "They need someone to be the horse." Thomas snorted. "Your father is not being a toy horse." "Why not?" Rose asked without looking up. "You're strong enough." "And smart enough," Lily added, "to know being a horse is important." Caroline tried not to laugh. Thomas groaned dramatically but crawled onto his hands and knees. "Fine. One parade. Only one." Both girls squealed and immediately began placing dolls on his back. Caroline pressed a hand to her mouth to hold back a laugh as Thomas, ranch owner and stoic father of 2, crawled across the floor while his daughters marched behind him, shouting commands. It was ridiculous and beautiful, the kind of moment that stitched a family together. When the parade ended and the girls returned to their games, Thomas leaned against the sofa near Caroline, stretching out his legs with a soft groan. "You all right?" she asked quietly. "Getting there," he said. "Leg aches in the cold, that's all." It had been healing well, though slower than he liked. Some days he pushed too hard. Some days he had to admit he couldn't push at all. And every day he hated feeling less able than he once was. Caroline reached down, brushing his hair from his forehead. "You don't have to pretend you're invincible." "Neither do you," he murmured, eyes meeting hers. A quiet understanding passed between them. Then, just as she'd been hoping, the baby moved. Caroline caught her breath instantly. "Thomas," he sat up straight. "Was that?" She took his hand and guided it to her stomach. A beat passed, then another flutter. His breath hitched. "There," he whispered. "I felt it." Rose looked up. "The baby kicked again?" "Yes," Caroline said, smiling. "Your little brother or sister is awake." Lily scooted closer. "Papa, did it really kick?" "Like a tiny mule," Thomas said. "Mama says I kicked harder," Rose announced proudly. "When I was in Mama Becca's belly." Caroline smiled gently at that, at how naturally the girls now spoke of both mothers without fear or confusion. "Maybe this baby will kick the hardest," Lily declared. "Because they know we're waiting." Caroline touched her belly, feeling warmth spread through her. "This baby knows they're wanted," she said softly. Thomas's eyes softened. "That they do." Later, after the girls had been tucked into bed, with only 3 trips back for water, hugs, and one emergency request for a story that absolutely couldn't wait until morning, Caroline and Thomas settled on the sofa together. The fire crackled low. Snow tapped faintly against the windows, and the world felt impossibly still. Caroline leaned into him, head resting on his shoulder. His arm wrapped around her waist easily, naturally, as if it had always belonged there. "Girls asleep?" he asked. "Finally. Think they'll stay in their beds tonight." "No chance," she said with a soft laugh. "One of them will wake up and try to sneak in. Then we'll be grateful for the company," he murmured. She tilted her head up. "You say that now." He kissed her forehead. "Every night." Silence settled again, comfortable this time. Gentle, the kind of silence she'd never imagined having with someone. "Thomas," she whispered after a moment, "can I ask you something? Anything. Are you afraid? About the baby?" He didn't answer right away. Caroline pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. "You don't have to hide it from me." He took a long, steady breath. "I wasn't planning to be a father again." "I know, and I'm terrified," he admitted. "Losing Becca, losing her, it broke me in ways I don't talk about. I couldn't protect her, couldn't stop the sickness. Couldn't," his voice wavered. I don't want to fail you like that. Caroline slid her hand up his chest to his cheek, guiding his eyes to hers. You didn't fail. Her, she said gently. And you're not failing me. She brushed her thumb across his cheekbone. This baby isn't a curse or a risk. It's life. It's hope. His voice broke. It's everything I thought I'd lost. Caroline rested her forehead against his. We're doing this together. You're not alone. He closed his eyes. I'm starting to believe that. She kissed him softly. Good. Outside, snow drifted heavier, soft as cotton. Inside, his hands warmed her belly and her heart in equal measure. A few days later, the storm finally broke, leaving the world glittering in white. The sun turned the snow into diamonds, and the twins begged to be let outside. Bundle up tight, Caroline warned. 2 scarves each. Yes, Mama, they chorused before racing off to find mittens and boots. While the girls prepared, Thomas slipped into the kitchen where Caroline was stirring stew on the stove. He stood behind her quietly, sliding his arms around her waist, resting his hands atop her growing belly. She leaned back against him. Stew's almost done. Not why I came in here, he murmured against her ear. She smiled. Of course not. Thought I should hold you before the girls bury me in snow. They probably will. I'll die happy. She laughed and turned in his arms. You're in a good mood today. Storm's over. Girls are happy. And my wife is glowing. He brushed his thumb across her cheek. Hard not to be. Wife. The word still wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Caroline rested her hands on his chest. What are you thinking, Thomas Brennan? That I'm grateful, he said softly. For you. For them. For all of it. She kissed him. Slow, warm, lingering. Then, Mama, we're ready. Caroline broke the kiss with a laugh. Your admirers await. Thomas groaned. They always need something. They adore you. He sighed dramatically. Fine. Let's go risk frostbite. That afternoon, the 4 of them played in the snow behind the house. Thomas built a lopsided snowman that the twins insisted was perfect. Lily tried to roll a snowball as big as she was. Rose kept making tiny snow angels right beside Caroline's feet. Thomas noticed Caroline rubbing her lower back. You all right? Yes, just tired. Sit down. Rest. She hesitated. There's still more? Sit, he said gently. She obeyed, letting him guide her to the porch steps. He knelt to brush snow off the wood, then helped her settle. He pressed a kiss to her hand. You don't have to earn your place here by working yourself weary. I know, she said softly. Sometimes I just forget. Then I'll remind you. The twins waved them over again, eager to show their latest creation, a snow fort nearly as tall as Lily. It's beautiful, Caroline told them. You did a wonderful job. It's for the baby, Rose said proudly. So they have a place to play. Caroline felt her throat tighten. You build a fort for your baby brother or sister? Uh-huh, Lily said. So they know they belong. Caroline pressed a hand to her heart. Thomas swallowed hard. Snow glittered. Sun glowed. The fort sparkled like something out of a storybook. And for a moment, everything felt perfect. That night, after the girls were asleep and the lamps were low, Caroline found Thomas in their bedroom, folding blankets. Long day, he murmured, watching her walk in. A good day. She moved toward him slowly, feeling the weight of the evening settle around them. You're quiet, he said gently. Something on your mind? She touched his hand. Just thinking about how far we've come. How much has changed. Thomas brushed her hair back. For the better? For the better, she whispered. They stood together in silence, the warmth of the room holding them close. Caroline placed his hand on her stomach again. Feel that. A soft, steady movement. Not a kick this time, more like a rolling shift. Thomas's face softened. They're strong. They're loved. He kissed her forehead. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Thomas. As she settled into bed, Caroline listened to the wind whispering against the window and Thomas's breathing beside her. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, new lessons. But tonight there was only warmth, only peace, only the steady beat of a family growing stronger every day. Winter loosened its grip slowly that year. The sun lingered longer each afternoon. The girls spent more time outside, chasing chickens, making mud pies, and following Thomas through the barn like two little shadows. Life settled into a rhythm that felt so natural. Caroline sometimes forgot she hadn't always belonged here. But the day her pains began, everything changed. It started gentle at first, a slow tightness in her belly, a pressure in her lower back. She had felt similar twinges for days, but tonight, something felt different. The sky outside turned lavender as the sun dropped behind the hills. Snowmelt dripped from the roof in slow, steady beats. The twins were cleaning up their dolls on the rug while Thomas stacked wood near the hearth. Caroline placed a hand on her stomach, wincing. Thomas noticed instantly. "You all right?" he asked, crossing the room. "I think so," she whispered. "Just stronger than before." "How strong?" Her breath caught when another wave hit. "Strong enough." He didn't ask more. He simply moved. "Martha," he called, already fetching warm water and blankets. "It's time." The girls froze mid-step. "It's time," Rose whispered, eyes wide with wonder. "Is the baby coming?" Lily asked, clutching her hands to her mouth. Caroline nodded, trying to smile through the pressure building inside her. "Yes, sweethearts, but might take a while." Thomas knelt before the girls. "Listen close," he said gently. "You'll stay with Mrs. DeWitt tonight. Mama needs quiet. The baby needs quiet. But we want to help," Lily said tearfully. "You will," Caroline said, reaching for their hands. "By being brave and letting us do what we need." Rose swallowed. "Okay." Thomas kissed their heads. "I'll come get you the moment it's time to meet your brother or sister." They nodded, trusting him completely. And just like that, the longest night of their lives began. Snow started falling again after sunset, light at first, then heavy, swirling across the yard. The house glowed warm against the cold, lanterns lit, fire roaring, water simmering on the stove. Martha moved with calm, practiced hands, checking Caroline's progress, offering sips of broth, rubbing her back during each contraction. Thomas tried to stay steady. He failed twice. The first time was when he saw the pain hit harder than anything before, and Caroline clenched his shirt to stay upright. The second time was when she whispered, "I'm scared." He took her hand, rubbed his thumb across her knuckles, and pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I'm right here," he murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." Between contractions, she could breathe, but each wave seemed stronger than the one before. By midnight, the house had fallen into complete quiet, save for Caroline's breathing and the crackle of the fire. Snow wrapped the ranch in a white cocoon, muffling all sound. Thomas stayed behind her, supporting her back, whispering encouragement, wiping her brow. Every time her strength faltered, he gave her his. "You're doing perfect," he whispered. "I don't feel perfect," she gasped. "You look perfect," he said, then flushed. "I mean, you're incredible." Despite the pain, she let out a soft huff of laughter. "You're terrible at compliments." He kissed her temple. "I'm trying." As the hours dragged on, Thomas's hands shook, not from the cold, but from memories. The last time he'd held a woman through childbirth, he walked out alone. He pushed the thought away, but it crept in anyway. Caroline sensed it. Women always sense the things men try hardest to hide. She touched his cheek between contractions. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered. He swallowed hard. "I know. I can't lose." "You aren't," she said firmly. "Look at me." "You aren't." He did, and her steady gaze held him through the storm inside his own heart. The pain grew deeper, her breaths shorter, her body trembling. Martha checked her again, then looked at Thomas with calm seriousness. "It's time." Thomas's heart hammered. Caroline nodded weakly, bracing herself. The next minutes stretched into forever. Her cries filled the room, not loud, but raw and human and full of fire. Thomas held her, whispered her name, pressed his forehead to hers through each wave. "You're almost there. Just a little more, sweetheart. You're stronger than any." Storm. And then a final push. A trembling breath. A heavy silence. Followed by a cry. Small. New. Alive. Caroline collapsed into Thomas's arms, sobbing with relief as Martha lifted the tiny, wailing child wrapped in a cloth. Thomas's face crumbled. "Oh God," he whispered. "Is that a boy?" Martha said gently. "A healthy boy." Caroline let out a shaking laugh as tears streamed down her cheeks. "A boy. Thomas, we have a son." Thomas pressed his forehead to hers. Choking on emotion, he couldn't speak. I can't, Caroline, he's perfect," she whispered. Martha placed the tiny newborn into Caroline's arms. The baby quieted instantly against her skin, curling his fingers into the blanket. Thomas stared, breath caught in his chest, heart pounding harder than any winter storm. He sank to his knees beside the bed, one hand over his mouth. "He's real," he whispered. "He's real." Caroline stroked his hair. "Yes, he is." "Caroline," his voice broke. "Thank you. Thank you for giving them a brother. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for staying." "I don't," he swallowed. "I don't deserve any of this." She cupped his face. "You deserve all of it." He leaned into her hand, eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. He kissed her, softly, reverently. "This is the happiest moment of my life," he whispered. "Mine too," she said. Right before dawn, Thomas fetched the girls. They ran through the house barefoot and breathless, hair a wild tangle from sleep. "Mama, Papa, where is he? Can we see him? Is he little? Does he have fingers?" Thomas ushered them in gently. "Slow down, you two." But the moment they saw the baby, everything stopped. Rose gasped. Lily covered her mouth. They climbed onto the bed carefully, sitting beside Caroline as if touching something sacred. "He's so small," Rose whispered. "He's so cute," Lily added. Caroline smiled, exhausted but glowing. "Do you want to hold him?" Both girls nodded vigorously. Thomas helped them sit safely. Caroline placed the baby into Rose's lap. Lily leaned close, staring with wide eyes. "He's ours," Lily whispered. Caroline nodded. "Yes, he's ours." Rose stroked the baby's cheek softly. "Welcome home," she whispered, voice full of wonder. Thomas swallowed hard, his arm around Caroline. "He's lucky to have you too." "No," Rose said simply. "We're lucky to have him." Caroline's tears spilled again. The family, broken, rebuilt, healed, gathered around that tiny new life, watching snow fall through the window as morning light warmed the horizon. A new day, a new chapter, a new beginning. As the sun rose and lit the snow in gold, Caroline leaned her head on Thomas's shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. He kissed the top of her head. "We sure did." The baby slept in her arms. The girls leaned against Thomas. The fire crackled softly. Everything felt full. Everything felt right. Thomas breathed her name, soft as a prayer. "Caroline." She looked up. "Don't ever leave," he whispered. "Not ever." She touched his cheek. "I'm not going anywhere." He pulled her into his arms, carefully, tenderly, as if holding the entire world. And for the first time in their lives, every heart in that room knew exactly where it belonged. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wild West Emotional Tales, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.